Hello, my fellow degenerates of YouTube. So, Mike Pence recently went to several of the detention centers in Texas, and I have a few videos to share with you guys. So this first one is by The Guardian, showing him getting a tour from one of these Texas border facilities. These people, appears that they only have standing room in this particular cage that they're in. A lot of them are wearing masks. Not in this video, but in a different video, Mike Pence makes comments about the smell. Apparently the smell in there was quite overpowering because a lot of these people have not had or been given an opportunity to shower in a very long time. Mr. Totally Not Creepy, Totally Not Gay, also super not gay, just hates the gays because of how tasty their dicks look. Mike Pence not even making eye contact with these people. Not even making eye contact. And these people over here, they have the courtesy of being able to lie down, so that's good. So that's video number one. Video number two is an interview that Mike Pence did with Pamela Brown for CNN.
We went to two different facilities today, and there seemed to be a big difference between the first one where the families were being housed and the one here where there are single adult migrants. When I went in there, one of them said to me, I'm talking about the second facility, this isn't human, the way we're treated. There was a horrible smell. I'm sure you smelled it. You were in there as well.
Yeah.
They were sleeping on concrete because there's not enough room for cots, we're told. It was hot. Some of them claim they were hungry. Is that acceptable to you?
No, it's not. And it's the reason why we demanded that Congress provide $4.6 billion in additional support to Customs and Border Protection. Look, for the last 6 months, Democrats in Congress have been saying this is a manufactured crisis. But as you saw firsthand today, here at McAllen Station.
So Pence is going to do this a couple times in this interview. He's going to shift the burden of this problem to the Democrats' shoulders for not giving them sufficient enough funding. Meanwhile, ICE has been going on a campaign of raids and taking people to these deportation centers. Thousands have been taken to these holding facilities in recent weeks. So the Republican-led federal government's continuing to take in more of these migrants than these facilities are able to contain, and that's not the Democrats not funding. That is the Republicans actively increasing the problem.
Where our cells are overflowing, and now that temporary facility that you just saw had to be established. And then the first facility that we saw, where nearly 1,000 families with children are being detained, ought to be a very clear message to every American that the time for action is now.
So ignoring the bullshit about deviating the responsibility of this to the Democratic Party, keep in mind this is Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence talking. He is going to give the absolute most charitable telling of what is happening at these detention facilities that anyone is going to give. And even he will not deny or will imply or will straight up say in this interview the smell was bad from the lack of hygiene. They were incredibly, horribly overcrowded facilities, that these living conditions in these places are unacceptable. All of this is coming from the absolute most charitable telling of what is happening in these facilities you're ever going to get here from Mike Pence. So keep that in mind.
And the time for Congress to act to end the flow of families that are coming north from Central America to our border
Again,
is
shifting
now.
the
Should there
burden
be a
of this
different level of
problem
care
to
for the
the
families
immigrants
versus the
instead
adult
of onto the
migrants,
Republican
single
Party.
adult migrants?
I think it's all the same standard of
But
care.
what we saw today was very different for the families versus the single adult
Pamela,
migrants. It
what
wasn't
you-
the same level
well,
of care.
What you saw today was a very clean facility where people were being detained indoors, and then you saw a
No
temporary
space to sit
facility
down.
that was constructed because this facility is overcrowded.
Temporary facilities intended to hold people for several days, where people are being held for several months.
And we can't keep people in a cell beyond what the rules and regulations allow for. But
And yet ICE is bringing thousands of more people into these facilities. It's almost like cracking down on undocumented immigrants to this extent is completely unsustainable, not to mention inhumane. Go figure.
everyone, even in that temporary facility, Pamela, is getting 3 meals a day. They're getting health care. They're getting hygiene. And the Customs and Border Protection.
We treat these dirty, dirty aliens just fine. We give them food. Every once in a while, we give them toys to play with. Oh, look, you got blankets. They got blankets. This is fine. This is completely acceptable behavior and treatment of my fellow human beings.
Is doing their level best in an overcrowded environment and a difficult environment to address this issue. But Congress has got to act to make it possible for us to reduce the numbers of people coming into our country illegally. And that's going to require us to change the loopholes, reform our asylum laws. And my hope is today.
So let's talk about
That's another point to bring up. These people that have come to the United States legally, even if they did not come through legal ports of entry, they have the legal rights to file as asylum seekers and remain in the United States legally. Even if they didn't come in the legal ports of entry, they can still do that. I believe it was the 1986 Immigration Act. I could be wrong about that date, but basically it stated that asylum seekers, even if they don't come through these legal ports, can still file to remain in the United States legally. They have the rights to do that. So, yeah.
I hope two things today, Pamela. I hope first and foremost that we've put to the lie this slander against Customs and Border Protection.
Slander.
I mean, people saying that families and children are being held in concentration camps is an outrage. And the Nazis killed people.
24 people have died in ICE detention facilities, 5 of which being children. But Pence isn't going to bring that up.
Our Customs and Border Protection, as you heard today, are saving lives every day. And you saw the profound, compassionate care for those families and children.
Oh, hold up. Profoundly compassionate. Yep. So compassionate. Can you feel the compassion oozing from this place? I know I can. Okay.
In the detention facility today. But the other thing is, I hope we also move past this rhetoric about a manufactured crisis. I mean, the president wanted me to come down here today to look in on how families are being treated, but also to be able to show the American people that this system is overwhelmed, it's overcrowded, and Congress has got to step up to end this crisis of illegal immigration at our southern border.
the first facility we went to with the families. Was that really a fair representation of how most of the migrant families have been treated under CBP care?
You are at the epicenter here in the Rio Grande Valley of this crisis of illegal immigration. 60% of those that are being detained coming across our southern border are coming through this sector. And so I think what we saw today was a very fair representation of how families are being treated. And look,
But there's
I
several different
understand
facilities, and this was one of them.
I
that
understand Americans
was
are
just
troubled.
built and made to handle the overcrowding.
Americans are troubled by.
Okay, so I don't know if this particular facility that this Guardian footage is from that overflow facility or of a different one. But imagine if this is the overflow facility, what the conditions must be like in the primary facility where people are being kept in.
by what they've read in the newspapers about
Well, all you have to
families
do
not
is look
being
at
cared
pictures
for.
like this. I mean, when you look at that, what do you see?
Well, I can't account for that.
Good on Pamela Brown, by the way. She I think she's doing a pretty good job at holding Pence's feet to the fire in this interview. You often see a lot of capitulation to people on the right from corporate media like CNN, but Pamela is doing a good job. So much appreciated in drawing attention to this very, very important subject matter.
What I can account for is that
But
the
you're the vice
facility that
president.
you
How do you not
saw,
account for this?
it's a facility that you saw today represents the level and the standard of care that we are working to bring to all those caught up in this crisis.
Level of standard of care intended to bring to the other facilities. Right? Level of standard of care. Yes. This.
But remember, it was just a few short weeks ago that Congress finally acknowledged the crisis and gave us an additional $4.6 billion in humanitarian aid. Now, we're going to continue to improve. We're going to continue to provide care at the standard the American people expect.
Again, you can't shift the whole burden onto the Democrats for underfunding you if the Trump administration is actively working to put more and more people into these facilities by uh, by ranking up these ICE raids. That's not on the Democrats.
But Pamela, remember, for the last 6 months, Democrats in Congress said it was a manufactured crisis. And it was all we could do to finally get the Democrats in Congress to agree to give us additional funding to deal with this crisis. And so we'll continue to provide the level of care the American people expect, and we'll do it with compassion and with the generosity. But ultimately, we have got to demand that Congress take the next step, reform these asylum laws, close the loopholes, and end this unprecedented migration.
DHS IG says that some children under this administration's watch didn't have access to showers or hot meals. Does the administration take any responsibility for that? Democrats are not in the White House. Where does the buck stop?
Yeah, we read those reports, and I know that they're being
Government's report.
They're being thoroughly investigated. I know there were also lawyers who were here who presented what ultimately became unsubstantiated allegations. But make no mistake about it, any allegation of people not receiving the standard of care that the American people anticipate is thoroughly investigated. The recent allegations of abuse are being thoroughly investigated. But what you saw today, I hope, is an encouragement to millions of Americans.
It's not.
That
Not at all.
even before Congress funded
Not
a temporary
at all.
facility, we built that temporary facility to house families who are caught up in this crisis of illegal immigration. And you saw not just 3 meals a day, children with snacks, there were diapers, there were hygiene products, changing tables,
dying,
children sitting in a
including
comfortable
kids.
air-conditioned environment, watching
I got
television.
AC. Oh,
This is how the American
Okay, it's
people
good. We're good.
expect
We got
us
AC.
to treat people who are caught up in this crisis. And we're going to continue to work to make that a reality.
okay. So that's what Mike Pence has to say about this. And once again, this is the most charitable telling of what's going on at these facilities you're going to get from anyone. And the whole thing about the smell, the poor hygiene going on in these facilities, he didn't deny that. The fact that they are grossly overcrowded, he did not deny that. The fact that people are being held here for far longer than these facilities are intended for, he did not deny that. So that's what's going on in these places. And I wanted to highlight this news article that came out a few days ago as well. A man was killed in an attack on an ICE jail, and he said he was fighting against the forces of evil. So this man, William Von Spronson, a musician and carpenter from Vashon Island near Seattle, showed up outside a privately owned detention center for immigration and customs enforcement around 4 a.m. Saturday, hours after an organized protest at the facility, armed with a rifle. He began throwing incendiary devices at vehicles, lighting one car on fire, and attempting to burn buildings and a propane tank, according to Tacoma police. Responding officers opened fire, killing the 69-year-old. The Pierce County Medical Examiner's Office said Monday that Von Spronson died of multiple gunshot wounds. The 4 officers involved were placed on paid administrative leave as the investigation continues, the department said. Last year, Von Spronson was one of 10 people arrested at a protest outside the detention center, the New Tribune reported. According to the newspaper, Von Spronson was accused of jumping on a police officer as the officer was attempting to detain a 17-year-old. Von Spronson later pleaded guilty to obstructing police. That 17-year-old who is now 18 and a lead organizer with Seattle Anti-Fascist Action, told BuzzFeed News that Von Spronson was active in a number of far-left communities in Seattle, but no one saw this coming from him, quote, because he was soft-powered. I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, the teen asked that his full name not be used for privacy reasons. Before attacking the facility, Von Spronson sent a letter to friends that he titled A Written Manifesto, which detailed his motivation to take action against the forces of evil, quote, especially fascism and concentration camps. And he also specifically identified himself as Antifa. So, this man, he attempted to firebomb a Seattle facility, a ICE detention facility, and was shot dead by I believe the Border Patrol agents at the facility. So, I am not one to advocate for political violence, especially not on YouTube. So I am not going to say that Mr. Von Spronson here was a hero, that his actions were heroic, that his actions were totally morally justified. I'm not going to say any of that. I'm also not going to say that the anti-fascist movements in general is a force for good and many of their actions are morally justified. I'm not going to say that either because not want to advocate for political violence. Don't you, no, not going to do that. This man here, Von Spronson, is not a hero for what he did. But what I am going to say is that it is my personal belief that these types of vigilante actions are going to continue and become more severe the more people on a broader scale understand just how horrid these facilities are, how horrible these people are being treated, and this is something I believe is going to become far more commonplace. I hope that it doesn't come to that, and I hope that a peaceful resolution can come to all of this. But what I foresee as a possibility coming out of this is that, assuming we get another 4 years of Trump, which seems to be not terribly unlikely that that could happen, given that his popularity rating is higher now than it was when he was originally elected president. So in the possible event that Trump is elected for a second term and these camps continue to do what they're doing, I can see that acts of violence like this will continue to increase, and the only hope I think at that point would be capitulation on the part of the Trump administration in response to acts of violence, and which will lead to better living conditions and hopefully the release of these people. Which is why I want to say, don't let it come to this. Go out and vote. I know some of you watching may be under the belief and the not completely unjustified belief that voting doesn't change anything, that these facilities will continue to exist regardless of who's president, and the problem will continue, and violent action like this is justified and necessary to solve this problem. It is my belief and my thought that if we get someone who's like a President Bernie Sanders or President Elizabeth Warren, given their very positive track records and their strong stances in the past as far as human rights are concerned and as far as workers' rights are concerned, that at the very least, the conditions will be dramatically improved for people being abducted by ICE. I believe the abductions by ICE, these raids, will diminish significantly, if not quit completely, and the situation would be far, far better for these undocumented immigrants coming into the United States. That is what I suspect will happen if we get a President Sanders or a President Warren. So I implore anyone who is watching to please get out and vote. Just get out and vote. It's if you want a peaceful resolution to this situation, or if you still, like me, cling on to the hope that there is a peaceful resolution to this situation, please get out and vote, get out and protest, and make your voice heard on the subject. And finally, I want to highlight this for anyone who may be at risk of being deported or held in an ICE facility, anyone who is an undocumented migrant, or anyone who knows undocumented migrants that this might apply to. The National Immigration Law Center put out this article about knowing your rights. It's entitled "Everyone Has Certain Basic Rights No Matter Who is President." And in this text document, which I will be linking in the description below, they give a printout for a Know Your Rights card that can be handed to immigration officers, and it gives certain advice as to what to do if you are confronted by someone from ICE. So it includes things like you have the right to remain silent, you may refuse to speak to immigration officers, carry the Know Your Rights card, this card right here, which is you can print out, and show it to an immigration officer if they stop you. Do not open the door. To be allowed to enter your home, ICE must have a warrant signed by a judge. Do not open your door unless an ICE agent shows you a warrant. They almost never have one. If an ICE agent wants to show you a warrant, they can hold it against a window or slide it under the door. To be valid, the warrant must have your correct name and address on it. You do not need to open the door to talk with an ICE agent. Once you open the door, it is much harder to refuse to answer questions. So this entire document has things like that and how to deal with ICE agents, border control agents that may come to your door. So I highly recommend to anybody that this is applicable to, or anyone who knows anyone that this is applicable to, please give this a look in the description below, and also to print out this card they have included in this article. So that's all I have to say for today, guys. Leave in the description any subject you want me to tackle in a future video, and thank you so much for watching. Peace out.